move on now to the music industry. With the advent of AI, a lot of persons have been wondering, will they lose their job? Now, who would have thought that those in the music industry would be the first to cry out and say, hey, what are you doing to us? What are you doing to our works? Now, the background of this is that American singer and songwriter Billie Eilish, along with some other musicians, have called on tech platforms to stop AI from infringing on their copyright. To talk about this with us, we have the Judy Taiwo, who is the CEO of Silk News, is also a broadcast expert and someone who's been around the entertainment scene for a very long time. Now, whether or not he's released a song for which he's afraid that AI may infringe on his copyright, he will tell us all about that today. Good morning.
Good morning,
Judy
Blessing.
Taiwo.
Good to be here again. Thanks for having me. Good morning,
Good
family.
morning, glad you're
Mubarak
here.
and Miriam as a
Yeah, great.
I picked the top
fantastic.
one.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Thanks for having me here.
All right, so let's look at what Billie Eilish and some of her colleagues are talking about, AI infringing on copyright. Now, they say that AI has begun to, some tech platforms beginning to use AI to create songs and make them sound like they were done by certain artists. But AI was supposed to, or in the thinking of the word, help make things better. What's happening?
So AI itself, it's supposed to be a tool. There's been an upscale in the use and the efficacy of these systems in recent years, but AI has been around for a very long time, right? So AI in itself is how to make, machines, computers do things that were historically done by humans, do it better. So we've had the advent of auto-tune, where people like me who have zero musical talent can hop in the studio and by auto-tune, how it sounds and make it sound better. That in itself is not a problem. The problem that is happening now is that certain developers are beginning to use these tools to mimic, copy these artists. And the quarrel is that if I'm an artist, I've devoted my entire life into creating this career for myself, how do you now make a copy of me without compensation? What is even enough compensation, right? So if you have a Drake song now that does 100 million streams, and there's an AI version of Drake that does 1 billion streams, who gets compensated? Who owns all of that? So that's like the fine line that developers want to balance, but artists are not having it because it's tough to control these things. As we've seen in anything, for instance, weapons, drugs, there's always going to be a subsect of society that are going to deploy these things for nefarious activities. So that's the issue that the music community appears to be having with AI developers at the moment.
All right, it's a known truth that AI is fast becoming the rave of the moment. Just like every other industry is also reshaping the music industry, right. And the concern has to do with the copyright issue. Well, what do you think might likely be the impact of artificial intelligence on music production generally, if not controlled?
So one, how do you control creativity? Who puts a marker on it and say this is as far as you can go? In itself, I've given the example of auto-tune. There's also a software that is called Fruity Loops, right? Where you can plug in things and create bits. Prior to then, people had to assemble a whole orchestra, play things, have choristers, have instrumentalists to make one 3-minute song. Now, with the press of a button, you can have that done and you are good. So that's on the plus side. On the minus, and the minus is very damning, is that these things, if left to spiral, just takes away the industry as it is known. Right now, there are people who say they don't mind if AI copies them as long as they get compensated for it. But if you do not get compensated, how do you sue the person? Who are you suing? If the thing is left unchecked, it just draws back the entire music industry, which in its best day, right, people have complained that the compensation is not fair. So you have the top echelon of artists earning so much, and you have people who can get a word in edgewise. Spotify recently removed about 1 million tracks from their platform because they didn't have enough traction. Now, if there are legitimate musicians who cannot even compete in today's present world, when you now add the extra advantage of AI, it makes it, unbelievable.
So what the musicians are asking that the tech platforms do to come up with a feature that takes away AI-generated songs from streaming platforms. Do you think that the tech platforms would accede to this demand?
So in the last month and a half or thereabouts, a music company, UMG, Universal Music Group, has asked that, as they didn't even ask, they just yanked stop TikTok from streaming their music. So the issue is some of these tech giants will get the gist in the large picture. However, the problem is that there are people who operate, for lack of a better word, on the dark web. Do you get what I mean? Who would do these things regardless. So the challenge is that in as much as we cannot stop innovation, we cannot stop people from using, plastic guns, for instance, to load firearms and do all of these things. In as much as we cannot completely stop these things, they cannot be legitimized by major streaming platforms and tech giants by taking them on. So if people practice these things, create AI clones and sounds and all of this, let it be an illegal thing, right? Already there's a mechanism for, plagiarism and copying people's sounds. There's a takedown notice, all of these things. There are trackers that you can put in your music to get it down from unauthorized use. So yes, you can only go so far, but it cannot be legitimized. We can't just say, we're going to control them. It's to ensure that we make it uncomfortable. It's almost like if you want to screen record for a movie, for instance. Most of these platforms make it difficult for you to use your phone, to screen record from the apps. All of these things are going to add up to making it very inconvenient for people who want to make these things. But the question is, how far are these tech giants willing to go in partnering with musicians?
Now, the debate around who owns the copyright to an AI-generated music has been on for a while, and it will keep going on. If you look at it, the question is, who should own the copyright? Should it be the person generating the AI version? Should it be the software owner or the artist? Now, in your own way, what do you think would be, I don't understand you're not a lawyer, but what should be the ideal way to handle this kind of debate? And what should be globally should be done to ensure that rights of artists or musicians are being protected, given this development?
That's $1 billion question. That's $1 billion question, because if you look at copyright law in itself, when AI is not even involved, there's an American musician by the name of Ariana Grande who did a song from Sound of Music, in the 60s. When she released that song, the estates of the owner, so those guys that composed the song, that arranged them, have died long time ago, right? But the estates of these guys still took damn near 97% of the earnings, right? So and that's without AI. So if you understand that this person owns this composition, owns this arrangement, owns these words, and AI machines are trained using these people's voices. So for you to get a Billie Eilish voice or a Bob Marley voice, that means you have to feed their copyrighted material into your learning machine system, right? So at what point does it stop being my own? If you feed a Bob Marley track into an AI system and it comes out with the voice that sounds exactly like Bob Marley, you can feed it Jidi Taiwo's lyrics, and it comes out as if Bob Marley sung it. At what point does Bob Marley's copyright end for AI to say, I own this? So I don't think AI can own any copyright if you are a clone of a pre-existing musician or a deceased musician, or you are a clone of anything. You shouldn't have any rights to it.
Now, having clones of musicians, whether it's the lyrics or it's the voice itself, what would that do to the music industry in terms of creativity and retaining the stay power that some songs or the voice of some artists have? You hear someone like Whitney Houston, even though it's an old song, but the voice just gives you something. There's a vibe it brings on, and you hear some voices, you really want to listen to the song, whether it's old or new. What would the use of AI cloning this artist works, whether it's in music or the voice, what would it do?
I mean, it's very likely going to bring down the industry, Because what it means is that for people who have that, innate ability to compose, to write, to arrange, that means you are taking everything that they own away from them into machine systems that can do it faster and more efficiently. Is that a future that works for everybody? I don't think so. Like we said, you cannot completely control innovation, but it is your responsibility to ensure that whatever it is that we're doing is carried over to the next generation. So if you have a clone of a Whitney voice, for instance, and Whitney, I think, has the most powerful voice in all of R&B music. It's incredible what she was able to do with her voice. Now, if you take that away and entrust it to some guy in his grandmother's basement, but who has a skill, to generate all of these things, what it means is that Whitney's career that lasted 30 odd years can be condensed into an hour, right, by some guy who has a skill to recreate it. Whitney's done. There's no need for me to go and pay X amount for Whitney's music when I can get fresh lyrics, right, from this guy, and that's it. Now, if you now scale it, this letter in question was signed by 200 artists, and they are not small artists. They are all established artists. Some of them are billionaires already. There's even the estate of Bob Marley in there. There's Osborne, who is ill now, cannot speak, but is in there, is a signatory to this document. So what that tells you is that for us to be able to have a music industry as we've had in the last 100 years and be able to recreate it for the future, we cannot allow this thing go out of hand. It's a tough battle. It's always, a sad thing if you have to fight innovation and fight technological advances. But if these things are left unchecked, it's going to bring down the entire ecosystem.
Now, with the speed at which technology is being embraced and AI is catching up with it, don't you have this concern that it might actually reduce the level of creativity expected of a musician or an artist? I give you an example. For you to be a musician in 80s, 70s, you must be able to play virtually all the instruments, all the basic instruments, whereby that will make you go to work, be able to play the guitar or the piano. But now, with the software, you can bypass. Will that not reduce the creativity expected of a musician now that AI is also catching up?
So that's where I'm now on the other divide, right? I've made jokes that I used to play the keyboard for about 6 weeks until I discovered PlayStation, and I stopped going to my keyboard lessons and took on gaming. So I'm not mad at it at all, right? Because the entire point of technology is to make things simpler. There were times that people used to trek from, it wasn't called Nigeria at that time, anywhere in this present geographical expression, to copy Chief Obafemi Awolowo, used to trek from here to Mecca, right? There were times that people used to travel by ship and it would take them 6-7 weeks to get to Liverpool, MV Oriel and all those things. These things now you can do in 6 hours or less, right? So that means technology in itself is for the greater good, right? So you do not have to assemble a whole band for you to make music if there are skills, to make it better. However, where creativity now comes into play, if you go on Google, for instance, now, and you see how to, you'll be shocked at the things that people are trying to look for. How to spell, how to dress up, how to do such and such. So what that tells you is that it's whatever you feed the systems that will come out with. So if you don't have the skill to arrange music, you don't have the skill, to write, no matter how easy AI systems make it, if you don't have it, you just don't have it. And I think people that are trained are going to be able to tell the difference. There are people in Nigeria that we know are not necessarily lyrically gifted, right? We know when other people write for them. There are people who are not vocally talented. You can tell the difference when they record music and then when they have to perform that same music live. So what that tells you is that for you as a music listener, for you as an industry practitioner, you can tell the difference, right? Even though for the common fan, maybe they don't care. But by and large, those are things that are going to come into play when you're negotiating for deals or when you're negotiating for performances and all of that. People know that, okay, Jide is not a fine singer. Why am I paying him like I'm paying such and such? Do you get what I mean?
Now, in this battle sort of between the artists and the tech companies, do you think that some music companies may be buying into what the AI tech platforms are doing. We have had situations where some music recording companies battle with their artists and want to keep the records of the artist. So in that situation, do you find it the thing of the artist versus music companies and the tech companies?
That's a very, very brilliant point that you raised, Ms. Blessing, because yes, music companies have always had issues with artists. Artists have always had issues with tech companies. What this means is that I do not put it past any record company, because if you have an artist, and we see this, disagreements all the time. Artist A wants to be signed for 3 years, you go away, and then you want your masters back after 5 years. And the record company is like, I can't give you back, you've not done anything for me. And then it goes to court, they do all of these things. There are several examples, I know that Brymo, for example, had this battle with Chocolate City where it was signed, and he opted out of the contract, and it took a long time, before the matter was resolved in the court. But the point of the matter was, Brymo's grouse was that some of the things that the record company promised him, they allegedly did not fulfill, right? And then he broke the terms of his contract. What it means is that, and I'm not saying this is what Chocolate City and Brymo are doing, by the way. What it means is that a disgruntled artist can walk out of his contract, but a record company can say, oh, I already have your voice, I can train it to deliver music for me. So these are some of the elements that I do not put it past, record companies. We've seen issues in the music industry where record companies have taken really damaging steps to prevent artists from making music. We've seen artists also do the same. I do not put anything past any of these parties.
All right, still talking about this copyright issue, the U.S. Copyright Office has taken a position, and the position is that AI-generated works lack the original authorship. Would you expect the Nigerian office here to also take a position and perhaps an amendment to the copyright law in Nigeria to cater for this kind of debate and development?
So in many places in Africa, Nigeria being, our reference point here, our problem is not exactly the existence of laws. As we all know, it's the execution of it. So we have all of these laws. Either to these points now, the extant laws, and I'm sorry I'm sounding like an AI machine, but those are words, right? The pre-existing laws, how effectively are we deploying them, right? But I know, having worked around the business for a minute, a lot of innovation that you see in the music industry are bootstrapped. They have happened in spite of government, right? So you find people who went to law, whose parents were hoping we're going to open a law office in Broad Street and Tejo Show and be doing, something safe. And you see them, they ventured off into entertainment law. So a lot of innovation that we've seen in that space is because of these guys that have taken the risk, to do this thing. So the copyright law in the US is tailored for them. I expect that because Nigerian music now is getting sort of global, so we have to now pay attention. Furthermore, Nigeria's biggest stars, at least in pop music, Afrobeats and all of that, are signed to global distribution deals, who have companies, who have headquarters in the Europe and American or whatnot. So I expect that there's a certain level of protection that those big stars get. By implication, it means that if I'm the biggest star on a record label and I'm protected by, say, Empire or UMG or whoever it is, the number 11 guy can see what's going on and hopefully, is smart enough to quickly prevent these things. But I expect it to trickle down, perhaps not as, quickly and rapidly as it's happened in the US now, but I expect it to trickle down to Nigeria in not so long.
Will it be necessary for anyone who wants to make use of anybody's music or, intellectual property when it comes to generating music now to seek permission? At least if that is done, perhaps that could reduce the debate, the fear, or the concern about these, AI creating more losses for the owner of this copyright. Now, should that be legislated in a way that people feel is necessary for that to be done? What would be the impact of that?
So again, this conversation is not new. They've just been exacerbated in recent years. So copyright infringement means that you have taken something that belongs to me and you use it for yourself, right? Sometimes you don't intend to. For example, if you put up a video on YouTube now and you put a very nice melody underneath it, it's not like you want to use it to make money. But the rights owner will be like, this is an unauthorized use of my copyrighted material. You cannot do it, right? So if you ask permission, the ideal thing is that the person will understand and say, oh, okay, yeah, this is just an harmless guy. Let me give it to him. But that doesn't work like that, right? Because you've sought permission does not mean that it has to be granted. Because people ask for forgiveness does not mean that they receive it. Even though in the holy books it tells us, but in business it's not like that. Also because most of this copyrighted material do not necessarily belong to one person. Take Bob Marley, for instance. Bob Marley has about 13 children, countless grandchildren. They earn from this thing of theirs.
Reality.
So if you are asking permission, who are you asking the permission from? Is it his wife who is still alive, or his children, or the record company, or the other record company that have bought the initial record company? So it's a multi-layered industry that is not as simple as it seems on top of it. My own take will be that instead of cloning artists, why do you not just create something new afresh, right? We all saw the movie Sim 1 from about 20 years ago, where some guy created, an AI robot, and people thought that she was female. She was human, right? If we create a new artist now from scratch, call it Femi Ayodele and the boys, and you create that, you do not need to sound like Ebenezer Obey, because you already have the skills, you already have the technological advantage to play juju music. But what I think is the problem is that people are short-term in focus. So you've seen how Drake has been successful. You see how Nicki Minaj has been successful. And you want to be a recreation of that. Even without the use of AI, you see when artists sound like other artists. Funny enough, in recent times, there's been talk of certain musicians who sound like K1 The Ultimate. I know at least of about 3 of them that sound exactly like him. And each time they ask K1, he doesn't say anything, but he doesn't need to say anything because you can tell that he's not a big fan of that. If you've been blessed with the gift of music and if you have access to technology, there's no need for you to become a version 2.0 of something that already exists. You can create something else entirely. So you can seek permission, but I guarantee you, maybe 99% of the time, the permission will not be granted because you are just taking it from people that is rightfully theirs and just passing it off as yours.
Now, on the flip side, while some artists may not want to give permission or their estates may not want to grant permission when the artists are no longer alive, don't you think that there are some other artists or record companies that may want to continue the career of a deceased artist and will want to use things like this and grant permission? So what is the way to have a common ground or a meeting point between the artist and AI, which seems to be the future?
I think the meeting ground should be AI to be used as a tool, not as the all-in-all. So if there's AI that can help you sound better, that can perhaps, there are these things that you can put cameras here and then holograms, for instance, and then you perform in the US or wherever. Those are great innovations, right? So nobody's against the use of AI in making things better. Where the problem is where people try to use AI as the A to Z of everything. It's always problematic in that regard. I'll give you an example. We're talking about the upside. There's been a conversation about the use of English words, on Nigerian Twitter and American Twitter in the last couple of days. And certain American thought leaders, VCs, think that if you use certain words, they are AI generated. Even I can tell when certain things are generated by ChatGPT, for instance. If you see things like in the vast tapestry of the cacophony of sound that's across the landscape, you can imagine, you can know, because 9 times out of 10, those are prompts that get, thrown up. So, but that doesn't mean that people don't use those words in real life. Sometimes I speak some things and I'll be like, what am I even saying? Why are we using this? But we use these words in general terms. So for AI itself should be a tool. If you are writing an essay, it doesn't mean that from top to bottom, you are going to copy what you're seeing on AI. Also bear in mind that these things are learning machines. It's because they've been taught these things by human behavior, human expressions. That's why they are replicating it. So for AI in music, in fact, it should be used as a tool. I know that I can write, but I cannot perform. If there's a machine tool that can help me perform, the things that I've written, all the better. But do I want to sound like Jay-Z, right? Tough.
Okay.
Well, we've been talking about the threats, the challenges, Now let's talk about the opportunities.
Right.
Let's look at the value addition that AI has brought into music. We look at the business aspect, the prospect, and some of the potential it has brought into it. So would you like to elaborate on that?
Oh, I mean, for every time that the music industry has improved, is because tech has allowed it to. I remember clearly when Alaba was the demon in Nigerian entertainment industry, where people only had to buy one copy of your material, either a song or a movie or an album or whatnot, and they can duplicate it overnight. Now, what that did is so I know people who decided not to fight Alaba. They did business with them. I know a couple of them that said, instead of you taking my music illegally, why don't you pay me to own it? I know because the artist known as Timaya has spoken about it, openly. I think for his first album, he gets 150,000 naira. And I said, okay, so you pay me this. I'm okay with this. I can live with it. Whatever you do with it is not my business anymore, right? So, but what technology did is that by the time streaming platforms became prevalent, we didn't need to go to Alaba. Everybody has a smartphone, and once you are connected to the internet, it provides the music faster to you. There's also the thing about lyrics, right? So people have commercialized lyrics, for instance, and these are things that were able to be done through the use of AI. People have used music that you probably would not have heard of in new compositions, in film, in all of these things. These are the value additions that AI can provide us. And then moving it a step further, it follows that if there are things that we need to do as a people, there are things that we need to do as an industry, and we can find the right machines to help us, we can do it better, right? So Baby Shark, I think, is the most popular song in the world, right? And it's not even anything, serious, right? I have 3 kids, so I know I've heard Baby Shark for a very long time. So, but the owners of it have been able to deploy it in a way that there are several versions. There's a Nigerian version, there's a Ghanaian version, there's a Korean version. These are things that we are going to be able to do. So again, it goes back to how much skills do we have by ourselves? How much innate creativity do we have that we can now use AI to improve us? And as we navigate those things, I think those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. But we've seen the explosion of our entertainment industry, how these things have benefited us, and it just behoves on us to continue to do this the right way.
Now, with this development, do you think that it will further increase intellectual property battles?
Battles.
Battles.
What? Yes. I'll give you an example. So I wrote my second book, and it was about Burna Boy. And then I had calls and emails from his legal team that said, no, you can't use the name Burna Boy in your book. That is copyrighted already. I'm like, yeah, it might be copyrighted, but I'm using it in the context of critique and review of an artist's work. But those are the things that we're going to find. So if you are going to use somebody's name or material to benefit just you, if I've written a book to say, oh, look at me, oh, I'm a very fanciful writer, come and see me, then it's a problem. But if I use the name into saying, oh, look at what this guy has been able to do with his music, critique his art, then it's safe. So those are things that will come up repeatedly with AI. So what are you using my copyrighted material for, right? If you are using it for, say, charitable causes that I'm sold on, I can be like, okay, that's fine. If you are using it for other purposes that I'm not comfortable with, that doesn't sit right with my own values, then it's a problem. So these things are going to be frequent in the coming months and years because the AI developers are not stopping. And if you know anything about technology, by the time it's public, it means that the third or fourth version is probably already in the cooler somewhere. So this first step of the AI battle is the first in a very long and extensive disruption that is coming our way.
Now, for Nigerian artists, because the AI deployment for music creation is done with AI that have been trained with certain artists.
That's right.
And then for Nigerian music, you understand that a lot of songs are not done in English, or they may have a blend of English, but they had done with indigenous languages. Do you think that some of those tech companies may have trouble trying to replicate the same thing in Nigeria because of the language barrier?
I don't think so. I don't think so. The world is a global village, as we commonly say. And yes, there are going to be teething problems. If you convert or translate Yoruba, for instance, use Bing or something, the translation is funny. If you do the same on Twitter, it's funny. However, Google has an office in Nigeria, for instance. They came up with a version of Google Maps that sounds exactly like Nigeria. You have that option. So if you are pronouncing words, you are going to hear them in the ways that you're accustomed to. So yes, they might have that teething problem in the beginning, but I don't think it's going to deter them, because what it means is that you have to employ more native speakers of various languages in able to be trained to train them. So yes, in the initial part, we are going to find funny pronunciations, funny words, you are going to find people, AI systems that will argue with you, no, that's not how to spell Adekunle. But as time passes and they are able to train them with more of us that are native speakers, they're going to get it, which is why we cannot completely fight. My own thing is we can have negotiations, we can do things better, as opposed to, upsetting the apple cart completely. So yes, in the coming future, they are going to speak a lot of Igbo and a lot of Bini. What's your native language? They are going to speak a lot of Pidgin English, in fact. So we just have to sit tight and make sure that we are in a position to be able to talk about these things, to have conversations about these things, and to benefit from it ultimately.
Let's wrap up with these. There are these concerns globally about looming massive job loss with the emergence of AI. Do you see that playing out in the music industry? What would you expect the practitioners to do to manage?
It plays out frequently. I know that all the streaming giants had recorded job losses in last year. Spotify, maybe about 1,000 people. Amazon, they won't even say they are not longer doing African originals. Disney, from time to time, you have these job losses. So it's almost like when the industrial era was coming to an end and people were transiting. How do you upskill yourself so that you are just not left floundering? Because it's going to happen. As technology develops, I've said it time and time again, what's the need for a doorman when you can have an access card, right? So that means that people who are doormen, who will stand by the door, will lose their jobs, right? Why do you need dispatch riders when you have email, for instance? So those people are going to lose their job. But how do you put yourself in a position that you are skilled enough for the next phase of transition? Because whether you are skilled or not, it's coming. I've been trying to study law since I was 30 now. And in my head, I was 30. When will I finish? Now, I've passed 30 now. I still haven't done the law. Time is not waiting. So we just need to put ourselves in the position that we're upskilled enough for the next phase of the technological advancement. Because it's coming. It's coming.
All right, well, we'll wait for it to happen. I think that some artists can heave a sigh of relief and say, before it gets to where I am, I'm talking about artists in Africa, the language barrier can keep them for some time, and then you get to enjoy, no problem, go on your shows, only the songs that you've done by yourself get streamed, and no AI song, except it's done in a language that is easily replicated or easily spoken by the AIs that train them. For Billie Eilish and her colleagues, let's see how this will play out between the artists and the tech companies. But I think that there can be a meeting ground in all of this. I mean, look at the wonderful innovations, the creativity that we've seen with AI. Right. With Autotune, who knew that some artists, I would not want to call any name, because one of them actually said he was depressed because another artist...
T-Pain.
Oh. He did.
Because he said it himself, revealed it himself.
But one of them actually said he was depressed because Usher made a comment about those who use Autotune not being talented or taking the shine of those who were really talented. Right. But it's enabled a lot of people who had writing skills, but they didn't really have the voice. So it just made it easy for people would not have a career in music to have a great career in music.
That's right.
Thank you so much,
Thanks for having me. Thanks for
today.
bringing me on Early Exchange.
It's great. You know, I mean, you come with this around vibe.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Do you plan to do a song?
I
Whether
have
with AI?
songs in my head.
Okay, so
But by the time
the
I have
voice
something
could be
that
done.
can use my voice, maybe we'll release it.
Maybe we'll
Me
try
and
Whitney.
Femi and
No, you have my support.
Whitney
Houston's
Houston.
voice.
Oh no, I'm not trying. No, I'm not trying.
We're just playing. And that's been the show today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Blessing AG. Stay with Sick News the entire day. And I must not forget to tell you the good news. You know, Early Exchange is getting close to a year, but it's about 10 months now. But the good thing is that Early Exchange and Sick News picks up its first award today as a station that supports SMEs, and not just SMEs, but business. And you know, this is what Sick News is all about. It's all about business, it's all about economy, it's all about development. And so today, at the National Awards for SMEs put together by Association of Small Business Owners of Nigeria, ASBON, in conjunction with the Ministry of Commerce in Lagos State, Sick News will be picking its first award today as a station to support SMEs. So congratulations to us. And we thank you for being part of the journey to push forward for an environment to support businesses and economic development. Stay with Sick News the rest of your day. I am Blessing Aichi.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.